Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar. Today's webinar topic that I'll be covering is new trends in document and forms in 2024. And I'll also be revisiting some of the topics I covered back in 2022 and 2023 and how the technology and trends have advanced in such a short time. My name is Greg Schmidt, and I'll be the presenter for today's webinar and be walking through those trends and innovations in the document and forms management area in 2024 and which ones you might want to take a deeper look at for your organization. In 2024, document and forms management is continuing to evolve, and it is driven by advancements in technology and changing organizational needs. Today, we're going to talk about some of those potential trends and some of the past trends that have evolved and will continue to do so over the next coming years. Here's just a quick look at the agenda before I get started. We're going to talk about the Fortra solution offerings in the document and forms automation quickly. And then we're going to move into that main topic and the new trends in forms management in 2024, document and forms management in 2024. And then I'm going to talk about digital transformation, departmental, and AI strategies. We're going to bring that up in this conversation. And then I'm going to move into, if time allows us here today, I got a little live demonstration on some of the OCR technology to walk through some of the intelligent capture capabilities and how that works inside the accounts payable process and bring efficiencies using AI and machine learning. And then I'm going to finish up with some Q&A if time permits. Feel free to enter any questions that you might have into the questions or the chat window, and I will address them towards the end of the webinar if time allows. And if time does not allow us to get that questions go through, we will respond to them afterwards as well. I will also plan to complete this session in about 45 minutes or less. And but if I do happen to run over, if I do get caught on a topic, the meeting is being recorded, and you will receive a link that you can rewatch anytime you want to, or if you need to share with someone in your organization, you can do that as well. Again, my name is Greg Schmidt. I'm a senior solutions engineer here at Fortra with over 24 years of industry experience. My areas of expertise are the document and forms automation, accounts payable and accounts receivable automation, intelligent document capture, robotic process automation, and business intelligence. I also have over 2 decades worth of experience in the IBMI report and data distribution area as well. And I've been key in helping organizations over the years, truly automate their document and forms processes and streamlining them with using the technology and some of that technology that we're talking about today. We've been helping companies for decades now and on the digital transformation and automation journeys. And our mission is really to, help companies, bring efficiencies to their business processes by streamlining the ways companies, capture and create and securely manage and do distribution on their business, documents and processes and business data. The document and forms management lifecycle is how documents flow through an organization's processes. Understanding these, document stages is critical to optimizing capture and the management and distribution and the security of the business information. Fortra has a variety of solutions that can assist in every phase of the life cycle, helping you save money and increase efficiencies and bringing security back to your organization. We have a variety of solutions, truly in 4 key areas, right? And some of these we'll be talking about today, secure document and workflow management, being able to manage reports and manage documents in your business and, being able to route them through approvals and stuff like that. Intelligent forms and workflow management, being able to take a workflow process inside your organization and build, a process around that to be able to collect data or create documents via a web browser or mobile device in some cases, right? Accounts receivable and accounts payable automation. This is a huge one, being able to, in some cases, create documents in the accounts receivable process for like invoices, bill of ladings, and and stuff like that. And especially if you're using like AFP processes today, and or if you don't have a built-in solution into your ERP system, our system is cross-platform, so you can put that in play like that. It does have like REST APIs and stuff that you can integrate into. And then accounts payable automation, I think, is key. That's one of the biggest areas that a lot of companies have been pushing towards is both the accounts receivable and accounts payable. But payable has really been pushed to because of they need to bring back efficiencies, right, and bring back some standardizations inside of there, and being able to interact, from a user standpoint, and maybe even less interaction in some cases, but then also push that data into the ERP system so there's no rekeying of that data. So it's nice to be able to do that and help people on that journey from that standpoint. And we'll talk a little bit about the journey of implementation and stuff like that, and taking it in smaller bite-sized consumable chunks, I'll say. All right, a little bit of the past trends. So from the past trend standpoint, you're going to see, some of the main ones. You'll see some of these flow over to the other side here too, but you'll see intelligent OCR classification. That's been a past trend for years now. We've been doing stuff with intelligent OCR and classification processes for 15 plus years here. Disaster recovery and high availability. That's always been a big trend because of weather and locations, and and data getting a little bit or a space inside the cloud getting a little bit cheaper, from that standpoint, and it makes a lot more sense in some cases from a backup and disaster recovery to push that off site or to another location if you have multiple locations. Centralized management is always a big thing, right? So that's always been a trend, for quite a few years. But retention is another thing too, right? For compliance and regulatory. I always like to say, just because you're keeping documents does not make you compliant. Keeping too many documents and keeping the wrong documents too long can make you not non-compliant as well. So you do have to look at that as well. Workflow enforcement. Being able to enforce, where a form goes to, where data needs to be filled out, who needs to fill in the data. That's a rising trend still, today, as we'll talk about here a little later. And then departmental automation processes. It goes down to, not just accounts payable and accounts receivable, but, HR, safety, shipping, shop floor, all the different areas of a business. If it's manufacturing, distribution, if it's education, if it's inside of a the legal department, it doesn't make really a difference from that standpoint, what industry or what department you're in. Bringing some layer of automation into that process, and sometimes that automation is just more, tying to the secure central repository. It's getting things into a core repository to be able to store them. And then here's some of the current trends that we're seeing, right? So we're seeing a lot of trends around the AI. We're having a lot of conversations around that, right? Because that's the buzzword today, right? Is artificial intelligence, and how's it going to fit into our strategy? And we'll talk about that here in just a minute, a little bit more, and go deeper into the artificial intelligence side of things. And does it make sense for all organizations? Just because it's a buzz does not necessarily mean you have to do something with it, right? So we'll talk a little bit about understanding that and stuff like that. But in those cases, a lot of artificial intelligence is built into applications already that you might not know that has been there, right? So like in our intelligent OCR and classification solution that we have, right? It has AI built into it already because of some of the machine learning and some of the algorithms that it has built into it and how it learns those different processes. So we'll cover some of that here a little bit later. So I talk a little bit deeper into that subject. The number 3 there, the departmental process. This is sort of a newer one, right? This is a newer one, meaning that people are expanding it more. It's not just accounts payable and accounts receivable. People are pushing in throughout the whole organization because they want centralized management, right? So 3 and 4 sort of go together. 4 is, it can be more around compliance and regulatory, but a lot of times, so many systems people have. They got stuff on the cloud, they got stuff on network servers, and if you're running an IBMI, they might have store stuff on the IFS, but they want to centralize that content in for those people in those different departments. And again, another one that's on the list still is that disaster recovery and high availability. That's still pretty high on the list, actually. I'm going to say that's actually creeping up a little bit, over the past few years, even a little bit more, or even the past 6 months. It's actually been going up a little bit more, to the top of the list. And then doing business intelligence dashboarding, so being able to build dashboards and do stuff like that. So that's some of the trends there, and being able to see some of that information at your fingertips, right? So being able to use, and like in our accounts payable solution, we have a dashboard to be able to show you all the transactions and values in flight, right, or in the process. But being able to build those and have that stuff, at your fingertips. Workflow process enforcement, that's still on the list, pretty high on the list. Number 8 is actually on a little bit of a rise. Report and spool file management. So a lot of report, again, going back to the central repository. There's a lot of companies that have other systems that do something like a document management system, but it's just for report management. So with our document management system, we can actually have a module that can actually monitor and pull that information into our system and convert it to PC formats. And then security incident reporting enforcement. Being able to use our technology, meaning that our forms management solution, to be able to create forms and workflow processes for compliance and regulatory purposes, but also for ease of use and how people need to report and do certain things within inside of an organization. So those have been some very high up trends at that point. And then this slide here, this is actually back from a RBMI marketplace survey that we did at the beginning of the year. And this really just sort of highlights the areas, that people want to be able to, push to is, high availability, sort of some backing information to some of those trends, right? And IT and business automation, right? And you'll see IT and business automation, there's some interesting things about the numbers, right? So IT and business automation here, and a lot of these topics here in this 44% are actually tied to artificial intelligence and document management. So if you lump those all together, that's a pretty substantial number at that point, right? If you put those together at that point and then throw compliance and regulatory in there from that standpoint for documents and stuff like that, a certain percentage of that is around the document side, not just data. So those numbers are they increase pretty good at that point. So those are some of those trends and stuff like that. Now trending digital transformation strategies, right? A lot of organizations today, are putting that whole wave of digital transformation is still sweeping through industries and organizations. It's really never been stronger than it is now, right? I mean, because of all the things that are happening, it's really there's benefits that are reshaping organizations and the way they are compete in the industries, right? So digital transformation phases, you need to be able to have strategies that you can adopt a little bit quicker on at that point. So not all areas of the business, if you bring in automation, you're going to be you can easily adopt around, right? But in some areas, you need to be able to tag on or add on or take the next step, right? And take that sort of that digital first thinking kind of process. So you can actually go around that and be able to create some of those processes and have ways to be able to help you along that journey, right? It's not just a straight line, right? It's a journey. It's going to take you around, and there's multiple things that can happen in that journey. Now, some of those top trends, right? I mean, if you look at some of this stuff, artificial top trends, AI is on the list, right? Hybrid work experience is still on the list. Data analysis, being able to use BI solutions, right, and be able to analyze the data. Those are always big. Application modernization is always big, right? So being able to modernize, bringing in solutions. We have a lot of organizations that bring in our forms management solution or bring in applications to be able to modernize the application, but also to modernize their processes is huge. right? And being able to have that, the forms automation piece of that, like I was talking about, is beyond the paper. So a lot of organizations are still very paper based, but there's no really way to enforce those paper based processes. So they will build forms inside of our solution, to modernize those processes, like I was talking about, to be able to do that. And then another that's still on the list there from the standpoint, workflow enforcement, just the standard workflow of documents processing and going through the system. That's always huge in the process like that. And then intelligent document capture, again, which we'll be covering here just in a little while here, to be able to talk about that just a little bit deeper and talk about more on an AI strategy kind of thing and some automation capability. Um, you know, Now, really, look at the strategy here, right? So so you have to sort of look at your current strategies, right, and say, what's the current business systems? Are they outdated? Do you need a new strategy? Some cases you might not need a new strategy. Is there other integration needs that are needed, right? And sort of define those. Are we going to a cloud system? Are we on-prem always, kind of a feel? So you're going to have, current strategies that you need to look at, but then you sort of need to look on, and security obviously is, what level of security is needed, inside of the organization for certain kinds of documents or certain kinds of departments in the organization. But then you got to look at that and look at the future of that, right? And say, okay, of all these things in the current side, what's the growth rate of the business? Because you need to keep up, the business needs to keep up with the strategy, right? The strategy needs to keep up with the business, I should say, and make sure that the strategy can be nimble enough to be able to add to and change if need be, and make sure the solutions that are needed there for like integration into the ERP system, we'll use for an example like an AP automation solution, making sure that AP automation solution works with current system, but also can work with a different system as well if need be. You don't want to have to, if you change out an ERP system, you don't want to have to change out all the other systems with it. You don't want to have to do a rip and replace of everything, right? From that standpoint, or if new security concerns come up on documents, it should be a configuration thing, not I have to add something new inside of there. So you got to look at that future state. Look at current, obviously, understand what currently is being done or current features, and then understand what the future state needs to be or could be. Now, here are some questions that you can use to ask yourself inside your organization to see if you're getting the highest, business efficiency, within your document processes, right? So you can ask your employees, is your employees' productivity affected by time spent searching for lost documents? There's a lot of organizations that don't understand how many employees are trying to find documents that might be in filing cabinets, people's desks, in folders and all that stuff. But that's a good question to ask, and sort of get into that question a little bit farther, and research that and how they're doing things, right, and why as well. Is your organization exposed to audit and security risks because of documents that are not locked down and secured for user accessibility? So understand your document security strategy. If it's just in a network folder that anybody has access to, or in a certain location, somewhere that everybody, or what is that security policy? And understanding your security policy is the biggest thing first, and understanding what needs to be locked down and how, right? And commingling documents together and stuff like that. It's okay as long as you have security on those documents to lock them down. Do you struggle with hampered approval processes? Are you struggling with email approvals? Are you printing paper and handing them to people, scanning them back in? Now, how long is that process taking, and what are you doing in that process? And what are the struggles in that approval process? A lot of it's purely because they're not digital in most cases. And last of all, documents are in the organization, are stored in multiple locations. They, disparate systems. They have, systems like I said, they might have IFS storage, they might have Windows storage, they might have cloud storage, they might have SharePoint. They have all these different areas that the different business departments might be using, to be able to manage the documents. And you want to remove that from the organization and give that centralized repository. So that's why that's a huge trend, is because it's such a pain point. And I just want to spend just a minute on departmental automation. We sort of talked about it a little bit already, but departmental automation and its strategic importance inside of an organization. Bringing productivity back to the organization, right? In those different areas, right? Like accounts payable and accounts receivable, human resources. The top three. I'll say that's the top three that are very painful to organizations, right? The accounts payable, accounts receivable, and human resources is being able to have that capability, to be able to automate some of those things because it's very redundant in things that they're doing. Like in accounts payable, it's very redundant. The data entry part, right? It's a very manual and tedious process to be able to enter in line item information and all that good stuff. When there's technology out there that can automate it and they can be more reviewers instead of input people at that point, right? Accounts receivable, most of that's just capturing and sending, setting up some automation around that. Human resources is more around compliance and security. So you do have that capability there. And a lot of times, shipping and legal is more around automation on the capture, especially in shipping, is more around the automation of the capture of those documents and being able to retrieve them easily. But then legal is more on the management of the document and being able to, have retention, policies and being able to search and access things the way they need to. And this goes for any organization, right? Create a plan, and phase in the solution across the entire organization. I always like to, label it as a land and expand, right? Come in with, if you're looking at general document management, pick one of the. I always like the iceberg effect, right? The underneath part is larger, right? But pick one and start with one of those, right? Buy a lot of companies buy to solve the problem at hand, right? But then look at other ways you could use maybe the workflow and review processes, the document form security, or maybe you need to do some kind of different integration instead of using export files. You want to do something with REST APIs and do direct integration. So there's different things that you can do there from that standpoint. But really, and we'll talk about this a little bit later towards the end, but really, look at the point solution that that you're coming in with, and then expand that throughout the organization in different ways, and make sure it's expandable too, because otherwise you get too many point solutions inside of an organization, and you should be using just one that is more expandable. All right, now onto the fun topic. Yeah, do you need an AI strategy, for your organization? Right. That's a question we've been getting from prospects and customers for the past few years, and a lot more lately, right? And that's due to the AI, strategy, within organizations, and people want to know if they'll benefit from it, right? They're hearing a lot of buzz saying, what, oh, we're gonna, we benefited from it because of this and this and this, but you sort of have to sort of slow down and understand, right? And the question is, will we benefit from an AI strategy? If we bring AI in, will we benefit from that? And the answer is a little confusing, right? The answer could be yes, the answer could be no, and the answer could be maybe. It all really depends on your business and if there is an area that is a good fit for it, right? And meaning like accounts payable, like we were talking about, right? And this is just one example. But accounts payable, by removing automating the document capture, classification, and data extraction process, using AI to be able to do that and understand documents and build and pull that out. Could be building a chatbot on your website to provide layers of help for your customers and prospects that might be out there, right? And streamline some of that interaction so users don't have to do that. That's a 24/7 thing. That's the nice thing about automation. Automation does not sleep. It can run 24/7. But something you do have to remember is you don't want to implement AI into your business just because, right? Technology can be used for good and bad, and you got to understand that technology first at that point. So in this case here, like I said, you need to understand what artificial intelligence is. It's a lot of different things, right? From there's generative AI, there's machine learning, there's all the different models out there that do things. There's there's interface stuff that you can do that's easy to use stuff, and then there's programming things you can do, right? So you sort of need to understand and understand the risks, right, before you can put it into your strategy effectively, right? And you just don't want to, again, you just don't want to implement something because you think it's right or it's the buzz in the industry before you understand it, right? Making sure you have a firm understanding of what you need it for, right, in the business, and then making sure that it fits those business requirements. And also, a big one here is the security of your organization, because using those models, a lot of times it is a shared capability at that point. So you really need to understand what artificial intelligence is and what it is not before you can use it effectively in a strategy. And here again, artificial intelligence, and data sciences have become the front page in 2024, and it's duly because of the generative AI, conversations and stuff like that, like ChatGPT and all that stuff, and all the different models that are out there. So it's drove a big surge in the industry at that point, and making companies think about it from that standpoint. But also what people are not understanding is some of the securities and stuff like that around it. Now, companies like Google and stuff like that are using AI to streamline the user interface a little bit more, right? And helping the users and do different things like that. So that's a good use for AI, and companies like Fortra, like ours, we're using AI in our threat detection intelligence on the cybersecurity side. So we have our threat brain, and and the document and forms automation side here, we're using artificial intelligence for the intelligent document and classification processes for the AP, order automation, and claims automation. With technology and the advancements, it's hard to say what the next year. If we look back or look forward, to the next year at this time, it's hard to say what's going to be out there. It's changing so fast, right? It's looks different all the time, from that standpoint. But the first thing is, understanding the technology from that standpoint, and looking at your business and saying, is who can benefit from this? Can customer service? Can marketing and sales? Can we do stuff within the supply, chain management? Can we use something in human resources? To be able to do that. There's a lot of companies in the human resources side that I've seen some technology around, that you can feed it your handbook, right? And then you can users can ask questions about the handbook at that point, and it will go through the corporate handbook to find that information. Yeah, and then like I said, from the trajectory of where it's going to go, we don't really know where it's going to go. It's going to move quite fast, though. I will say from that standpoint, it'll hit some kind of plateau and it'll sort of peak a little bit. Um, but I don't know when that will be, right? But you just got to look at, like I said, the biggest thing in here is looking at the future, is looking even today, right? And looking at the business today is security, 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 right? It can bring a lot of efficiencies, but if it's not secure, you got to make sure, it's either a closed AI model or an open AI model, right? So if it's an open AI model, it's going to share data. You want to make sure it's more of a closed AI model if it's using your business data a little bit more at that point. And then, why AI offers a number of benefits. Here, like I said, there's risks associated to that. So outside of just technology wise, internally inside of your organization, you do want to make sure that you have, your policies around artificial intelligence, right? Here at Fortra, we have ours. From that standpoint and understanding, you gotta watch out what data you're sharing with those different models and how you're using it, and maybe content that's created by it, right? Because you don't own that content. Technically, it's a shared content at that point. So you got to watch out a little bit about that for intellectual property and stuff like that, and again, understanding that models and stuff like that. but creating those policies are big pieces there. And then, artificial intelligent risks, right? We sort of covered some of these already, but it's data privacy and security, right? That's the top one on my list, right? At that point, and lack of transparency and explanation ability. Um, they're black boxes in some cases, right? And you don't know how it's making those decisions and predictions inside of there, right? So you got to watch that a little bit from that standpoint. Um, so you want to make sure that that's there, and then you want to make sure that you're looking at the technical challenges and the reliability, right? Making sure that the technology doesn't fail. I mean, you got to make sure that you know how to look at the errors and being able to dissect it a little bit more, right? And understanding maybe not the direct algorithms that it's using, but understand some of the trends and how that works inside of there from that standpoint. And then a big one, like I said before, and I'm repeating this again, probably for the 10th time, is the security and the regulatory and compliance and the legal risks, right? So you want to make sure that, especially if, like I said, if you're using an open model. All right. I'm going to get into the intelligent document capture and OCR trends, right? And I like this topic that fits perfectly with trends, and it fits perfectly with the AI topic. So our and outside of our intelligent capture solution that we use in our AP module, we also use it for order processing, and we also use it for claims automation. There is something called actions built into it. Actions is the machine learning algorithm that's built into it. So it's a core intelligence that comes with the solution, right? So that's the AI part of it at that point, right? So that's where the knowledge is, and we'll talk a little bit about what that knowledge and how that knowledge gets in there. But it's the out of the box technology, and that gets us to, I put 50% to be conservative. In most cases, that gets us to 60 to 75%, depending on your documents and how they look, right, from that structure standpoint. Normally, to be safe, it gives you 50%, but normally, it's a higher number than that at that point. But then stage two, if you look at this like an implementation, we sort of take it through these stages during the implementation, and there's something in there called advanced auto find. Advanced auto find is the learning is one way to teach it things. So that's like bringing the core technology and using the core technology along with the advanced auto find, where users can point and click and tell it where that information is. So just because it's an exception today that came in does not mean it needs to be exception tomorrow, right? So we can do different things like that inside the application. So think of like business rules and stuff like that, right? So that gets us more of the user interaction. So in the case of AP or claims or orders, someone can point and click and tell it if it doesn't know where that information's at. They can teach it that information and it will learn. I always like to call it interactive learning. So it can do some of that interactive learning process. And then I think stage three is key, right? Not all solutions go as deep as this, because they like to stay at the user level. The definition creation can be a user thing. It's more of a technical thing, but we can train different people on those from different departments and different levels, power users normally. But definition creation allows us to configure the solution without training, but you're teaching it. It's I don't want to call it a template, but it's sort of like a template, right? It's a definition for maybe a troublesome vendor, we'll call it, right? That has a very different format, but it's a high volume one, and you don't want to have to deal with that one all the time. So we have definition creation processes that you can map out that information on there, and apply that information and create tags and stuff on the document to extract the data that might be hard to pull off. Like a lot of times, I'll use a definition example. We run into definition examples if there's some really weird stacked information inside the line item. Sometimes the item number might be part of the description, might not be nicely divided out. We can use, normally we would use definitions for that. Sometimes you can use advanced auto find to do that, but definitions are normally what would be used for that process. And with the technology, I think this is the cool part of the technology. There's a neural network behind this, right? So it is a closed AI model, in what I'll call a closed AI model, meaning that it is taught these different things in the module during the process, right? And there's certain things that can be done to teach it more. Like we can collect samples, and then every release of the product, those samples will be taught in the will be taught in the new actions inside of there. So the more samples we get inside of there, the more the more it will learn from those different different ones. Today I think there's over 5,000 different sample structures in there that the algorithm is built off of. But this allows us to say that we're in an implementation process, and you want to be able to train it, through a different process or something like that, or have them, maybe you don't want to create a definition always for things. You say, hey, can you put this into the invoice actions module and bring it into the neural network? We can actually create that process and use the AI technology to be able to take that information and learn it and bring it into the core function of the application. So it's a really cool process there to be able to do that. So that's something that that's sort of an extended offering kind of a feel. There's really no cost to it from our side that we push out. We would just collect that information or collect those document samples and then put that into the process from that standpoint. So those are always nice from that standpoint to be able to learn and keep the technology moving forward. And just remember, you don't have to do this all at once, right? Take a step approach. Sometimes it's too hard to bite off all at once, right? People are busy. The business has to operate, right? Take it in more of a step approach where you have a long-term vision of success, right? You know where you want to go, right? But but you first have to define that starting point and define those individual steps as you go up to the top, right? So that long-term vision does not necessarily mean it has to be years out. That long-term vision could be 6 months out. But you have to define success so you know that you're succeeding in an implementation process like this, or through it with whatever you're using, if it's AI technology or document management or whatever it is at that point. You got to be able to do that. So you got to pick that, sort of that. I always like I always call cleaning up the digital mess, right? Cleaning up the paper or cleaning up electronic processes, but pick a date to start from. So this goes for any project, right? Pick a date to start from, create that phased, plan based on needs versus wants. So you can sort of, go through that process there, analyze the current processes and see how you can show value to those different business areas. Right. And then, like I said, land and expand, like I was talking about earlier, expand throughout the organization and set the expectations at that point, because you are going to get a lot of so if you implement this in a certain area of the business, you're going to get a lot of people asking, I want that too, because it streamlines the way they do it. It's a different thought in people's mindsets, right, when they're dealing with digital over paper, but it is a lot more efficient. And once they get their hands on it and get trained well enough at that point, right, and learn it and understand it, that will help them move forward. And that's a big thing there too, is making sure training happens. Through this process, you have to train people how to use the software or the solutions, right? You got to teach them, and because by training them, we'll show them how they can bring benefit to their job, but how it brings benefit to the organization. So I think that's a big part of it. All right, I'm just going to spend a few minutes on the intelligent capture portion here, so you can sort of see that in play here. In this process here, give me a second. Sorry about that. All right. In this process here, there's different things that we can do, right? In my process here, I will drop some files in there. So I'm going to take some samples. I'll take these 3 samples right here, and I'm going to copy them and put them into an import folder. So we have watchers that watch folders, that watch, email accounts, They could watch websites. There's different things that they could watch to be able to import those in. But the cool part about the technology is it can look out there, grab that information, and then process that information into the system, meaning that it can classify the document, it can extract the data from the document dependent on the document classification. So it's smart enough to go through, oh, hey, this is an invoice. Oh, no, this is an order. No, this is a claim, or this is a bill of lading, or this is a pick list, pack list, or whatever it is, right? So once it learns that information, it can then start to do some of that separation and then OCR the correct information out of it to be able to pass to the ERP system or to the rest of the whatever the rest of the process is in those cases. Now, in the case of the technology wise, I'll show you those three examples here. This is what we call the verification station. The verification station is normally only used for problems with documents that need to be corrected. But in this case here, you also could use it for visual verification purposes. So if you see here, this invoice here has no problems. This one is all perfect and there's no problems with it. I just have it going here because someone might want to visually verify something. And when you're working with OCR, you want to make sure that you have the capability to reference and it's doing business rules as well, right? So in the case of like data, we're not just ripping data off the document and hoping it's correct, right? That's the wrong process. Let me change this 2 to a 1 on the quantity here, and then I'm going to have it go back and refresh, and you're going to see that it actually threw a math error here because it actually is not adding up. The line item total is not being verified because of that total amount is wrong. So we can actually validate that information is correct or if it's not correct, dependent on the data that we're seeing. So it can actually do math out of the box. Now that's an example of a business rule. That's an out of the box business rule is line item math, right? You can build other business rules to do different things as well to be able to to apply to it. As long as you know what that business rule is, you can pretty much put that into the application. Now, when you go inside of here, I'm going to go to another one here. I'm going to go to validate rules here. So I'm going to go to another document and just show you one or two more of these. But in this case here, this is a one where we can teach it things, right? So it doesn't know where the line item information is in this case. So this is one where I might want to teach it some information, and teaching meaning not typing, but I'm going to come in here and say, where's my item number at? And my item number is stacked. I could create a definition for it if I wanted to, flag it for design, and it can go to design at that point. Or in this case, I just want to teach it, right? This is one I'm going to click on, and I'm going to tell it certain information. And then when I tell it that certain information, you're going to see that these blocks ain't extracted at that point. So I'm going to actually refresh that, and it actually verified, and we're good to go. Now to train that, I can come in here and tell it to do auto find and actually learn or relearn this document. So I can actually tell it and say, okay, now I have the data corrected with my auto find. I'm going to correct that information and process it into the system. So the next batch that comes in with that's being processed, it will learn that information at that point. So that's some of the ways that the technology can be used. But all the information on the document you'll see is usable in this case to be able to click on and tell it certain information. So it's very very nice from that standpoint. But it's using AI algorithms to be able to detect all this information and pull out all these different pieces. First of all, classifies it and say, hey, this is an invoice, and it's an invoice, and I do a lookup for certain information into a database and use data, live data from an ERP system to be able to do verification if it's there. But then also, like I said, is verify the information the totals are correct by some of the math capabilities as well. So a nice slick user interface to be able to do that through a web browser, for exceptions only, or if you just want to do visual verification, or like in some cases, like with order processing, sometimes you have to do some corrections on those orders before they go into the system. So you want to be able to do visual verification and then send those through. All right, that concludes the webinar here today, and we're pretty much right on time here. I just want to thank everyone for attending today's webinar. Hope you've learned some helpful information about the new and the old trends in document and forms management, and how your organization can take advantage of some of these, right? And maybe ones that you might want to look at a little bit more, or open up those discussions around AI and stuff like that. And feel free to come back to us and schedule some time with me and the team here on the document and forms automation side, just to discuss some of those different strategies and stuff. We'd be glad to help with that as well, and also to schedule a demo if you want to see any of the solutions, like the advanced capture or the intelligent capture or document management, and how it could work for certain processes. We're here. We're here for you, from that standpoint, so we can help you in any way possible. You will, at the end of this webinar here today, I think it's probably tomorrow you'll get it, but you will receive a link, uh, an email with a link in it, from that standpoint, that you can share or rewatch, if you need to, if you missed anything, if you had to step away or anything, but you should be able to get that here, either later today or tomorrow. Thanks again for attending today's webinar. Have a great day and enjoy the rest of your week.